Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answer should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. As you know, the Muddy Waters Podcast exists to help the people of Maine better understand what is going on in our state. Unfortunately, the mainstream media has become a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, not seeking to share everything that is relevant and important for people to be able to understand what's going on in our world. And that's why we exist. We interview people from around the state, and occasionally I offer my own opinion on what's going on to help people better understand from hearing from people on the ground. And we also like to promote cool events that are doing the same thing and are focused on bringing about some common sense governance in our world. And really excited to have Maddie and Jimmy Cornish back on the podcast to talk about this year's Common Sense Fair. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, you picked a really good time to come on. Obviously, there's a lot of fun stuff going on in Maine politics. Like, I think the world is looking at Maine and being like, this is an example of how politics should be done.
What a clown show. Oh my God.
It's actually sad. You know, it's one of those things. It is funny. It's a bit humorous, but it's humorous in a sad way. Like, I wish, for instance, we had two parties or more that had common sense ideologies and things that were going to lead to a better state, a better country, a better world for all of our citizens. Instead, we have, as I was saying before the podcast, a dumpster fire inside of a dumpster fire of the Democrat Party, which is like imploding. And what's funny is like nobody is really issuing like any remorse on their prior endorsements. Apparently, they are still fully committed to saying that the Nazi tattoo was okay, the communistic ideals, rape blaming women, which is kind of interesting now, right? His physical abuse of his previous girlfriend, but it was okay because she was a conservative and she was just an activist, so it wasn't real, right? And the list goes on. The porta potty stuff was, I think, probably one of the most visceral ones that I think most people were like, ugh. And might have had more impact even than some of the other things in an average voter. But all of that stuff, right? The infidelity, the list just goes on. None of them are like, okay, yeah, we should have seen the writing on the wall. They're just like, okay, now it's rape. So, and it's all too convenient, the timing. that, really it's about replacing him because they recognize that he can't win. And so, but what's funny is like all of these Democrats who just lost their primaries are just so excited to jump back in the race. And they're just like, they're not seeing and reacting and acting as if this is a huge egg on the face of the Maine Democrat Party. They're just like, can I get my piece of the pie? And it's wild. So it's fun as a conservative because I think it will help us potentially win in November. But I'd rather not be here, right? It's one of those things where like I'd rather there be two parties that had not only, I think, had good people in them running for office rather than what we have, but also had parties that had good policies that were actually for the people rather than just being really creative at making it sound like they're for the people. Yeah. So anyway, that aside,
I think where the wheels started coming off was his rant about going to Washington and getting rid of career politicians with that were making millions of dollars from lobbyists, and somehow he didn't realize that he was talking about Democrats as well as Republicans, and that the Democrats couldn't get rid of him at that point because it would be too obvious. So they had to wait. I believe that it was a Democratic ambush. This whole thing about bringing the women out at this point was just to have a better reason to get rid of him than, hey, he's coming after our lobby money and we can't have that.
100%. I mean, I don't think for a second that the Democrats actually, they'll claim to care. And like to some degree, sure, they care about rape and rape allegations and stuff like that. But it's just, this is an excuse. This was the excuse that they decided that they were going to use and jump on. It's like, after all the other stuff, it didn't matter. But now it matters because this is, I mean, the way that they're presenting it is that this is different. This is more, this is serious. It's like, guys, stop. Everything else has been serious and it's been concerning. Like, are you kidding? Like, who is believing you right now? And it's just, it was a tactical thing, as you said. What's interesting to me, and I always like to comment on it, is that, like, I mean, they do research. They do their own opposition research on their candidates, especially for U.S. Senate, before they run for office, right? You're going to pump billions of dollars. They go and they dig up whatever dirt they can find on their own. They figure out what the dirt is, and then they figure out, is it too much? Can we overcome it? Right. So they clearly, they must have done this, at least at some level, right? And they still put him forward. Obviously, the establishment pushed back against him. Like they wanted to back Mills. And I think where you have, my understanding is where you have the vast majority of the information that has been coming out, against him has actually been pushed out by the Democrats, because the Republicans were like, let him be the nominee and then we'll put out our opposition stuff. But why do it before he's the nominee? Why waste money in pushing that stuff out there? And also strategically, I mean, if he is really that bad, like, it's easy for us to beat him. And so why would we, like, tactically, I mean, sometimes people don't like to think about tactics in politics, but they're real. And so what's the real benefit for us to be able to push that information out early? And so this has all been, like, pushed out by the Democrat establishment. And so that's where Graham Plattner, it's interesting in his, like, speech, he commented on, like, the fact that he's being pushed out by the Democrat establishment. And he's absolutely right. However, he fails to see that his own actions are actually what led to this. It's like, you being a terrible human being for a significant portion of your life are the reason that they had an excuse to go after you, right? Like to remove you. So it's like, there's that lack of introspection with him, which is unsurprising because, he never apologized. I've never seen him in any of the stuff that I've seen apologize for the actions that he did in his past. Instead, he just simply explains that I was dealing with some difficult things and I had PTSD, and we're all just supposed to forgive him, even though he's not even apologizing. But basically claiming mental illness that's supposedly cleared up, even though he's still 100% disabled BA because of it. So anyway, I don't know. That's all fascinating to me. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about, but it's hard not to talk about it, right? So I'm really excited. I was able to be at last year's Common Sense for Maine, not Common Sense for Maine, sorry, my brain, different direction, but Common Sense Fair. And it was really fun to be there. Unfortunately, I had to leave early because I had made the decision to go off to Charlie Kirk's, funeral or memorial, whatever you call it, out in Arizona. But it was a great time while I was there, talking to a lot of people who have, common sense, and it's kind of fun. So, you had a lot of really great speakers and people who were there last year. But tell us about this year's Common Sense Fair and where it's going to be and what are all the details.
Go ahead.
Well, we are going to be at the Litchfield Fairgrounds again. This is year 3 at the Litchfield Fairgrounds. And we have one guest speaker coming back, and that's Major Mike Gary. And he's still trying to get reinstated into the National Guard. So we want to see where his journey's taking him. And hopefully by September, we'll have some good news. We went to see the documentary that he is in. What is it?
Duty to Disobey.
Duty to Disobey. It was premiered in Westbrook just recently, and it's amazing. So if anybody has not seen it, you should see it. A lot of information about our military and what they go through. So he's a repeat, and then we have new guest speakers this year.
Bunch of them.
Go ahead.
The Kevin Jenkins is the first one. Kevin Jenkins runs the Florida chapter of the Children's Health Defense.
Okay.
Down there, and he's flying up from Florida on his own dime, not charging us a cent, to come up here and speak. And
wow.
Just an amazing individual. I've had Maddie and I have talked to him a few times on the phone. We've heard him speak. He was a part of the Maine Stands Up right from the beginning, to come up and remind people of their duty and their responsibility to the Constitution. When we have tyrants saying, you can't go to church and you can't, have more than 5 people in your house and you need to stand 6 feet apart and you have to wear masks and all of this nonsense. He was the one that he rallied. He came and he said, stand up. This is unconstitutional. You don't stand for it. It's we the people need to stand our ground here. And and he's just a remarkable individual. We've had some really deep conversations with him. And then Charles Eisenstein is going to be coming up from Rhode Island again on his own dime. These people are rallying around. It seems like the Common Sense Fair is becoming important. It's finding its way in the world. People are seeking us out. I mean, we actually did contact both of these people, but they were quick to jump on board and say, hell yeah, I'll do it. And Charles, kind of his big claim to fame most recently was a speechwriter for Bobby Kennedy during his presidential campaign. And he came out early as well on the against the whole COVID debacle, and saying, we need to ask questions here, and people need to stop, bullying others into their own, corner. He knew it smelled fishy from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm against government control, especially over, healthcare, actual healthcare decisions. We get into some other stuff around that, but yeah, I think deciding what kind of stuff you're going to put into your body is something that should be your own decision. That's something that we are definitely, a lot of things you guys are on the same page with me anyway, but I think there's a lot more agreement on that. That's a kind of a broader thing, which is what was one of the interesting things about the Maine Stands Up organization and the pushback against Mills and Neerav Shah, and unfortunately, these people are rearing their ugly heads. I mean, Hannah Pingree was very I think it's worth mentioning that Hannah Pingree was very involved in that process. She was part of the administration, and she would 100% just follow suit with what Mills did if another opportunity presented itself to force people to do things medically that they don't want to do, in terms of vaccinations and possibly other things at this point. It's interesting because like I'm not in a position yet, and who knows, where I'm like I would label myself as being anti, what the left likes to position people as being anti-vaccine. But obviously, like there are a couple of things that the COVID-19 vaccine was not actually a vaccine. They decided they were going to change the definition of what a vaccine was. But more to the point, like if people like if this is a thing that could potentially protect you from certain diseases or whatever, there's a lot of science that I think we need to question around that and figure out like how effective those things are, especially given side effects and other potential things before we push it. We should never push it massively on a population. So anyway, I don't know. I felt like throwing that out there because that's a lot of what we're talking about here is like, yeah, there were the mandates, but then there were the forced injections. Then there was my favorite. I always have to comment on this because Spectrum, it's not a medical. There is, there's an organization, Spectrum Medical. That's not what I'm talking about. But Spectrum, the cable company, they actually are not a healthcare organization. And so when I was getting emails in 2021 telling me that I needed to get the COVID-19 vaccine from Spectrum, that there's something wrong. When your organizations are offering to pay their employees bonuses for getting this, like we should not need to be coerced into doing things that are in our best interest. We should not need cable companies and our employer telling us that there are no long-term side effects of something that has only been around for 6 minutes. Right? Like this, and this is the nonsense that happened. And this is, what we want to continue to make sure we fight to ensure doesn't happen again in the future. Anyway, sorry. I felt like I had to interject that.
But one of the things that we need to make clear here right in the beginning is that the theme of this fair is the way forward.
Okay.
That COVID is behind us now.
Yeah.
And we need to keep a sharp eye and a political eye to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it than that. And there was a lot more to Maine Stands Up than COVID. We began to understand, if you follow Zach Bush at all, do you know him, Dr. Zach Bush?
I don't.
He has an organization called Farmers Footprint, and he understands and knows, and most of the people coming here know that, the word organic and organic certification has been compromised, and that regenerative is a kind of a new term that's being thrown around about building the soil. And the soil health is connected to the human health and the animal health, which we all know anyway. But Zach has gone into the census records, and we keep hearing about overpopulation. Well, the fact is that we are actually in an extinction event right now. That in order to maintain a stable population, you have to have a birth rate of 2.1 per couple. Right now, the United States is at 1.7. Most of Europe is between 1.6 and 1.7. China's at 1.3. Japan's at 1.4. Humanity is currently in an extinction event, and it has a lot to do with our food. And our food has a lot to do with our soil, and it has to do with insecticides and pesticides and PFAS and all of this sort of thing. So now that we realize that, and we're coming to this realization that, we are standing on the edge of this great abyss, this whole social engineering experiment we've been on for the last 100 years has brought humanity to a really scary place.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do we fix that? where do we go from here? What is the way forward? And these people that are coming and speaking and paying attention have got some really good ideas. And one of our guest speakers is Mark Fulford, who spoke 2 years ago, and he was in a documentary film that Merrill Nash made called "The War Against Farmers," or "The War on Farmers," I think it was called. And you know, with these pesticides and herbicides, that you know, the whole problem, or one of the major problems with the decline in humanity is the toxicity of the soil. And it's already been proven over and over again with these weather modification plans, you know, that they're dumping mercury on us from the sky, and they're dumping aluminum on us, and any number of things. It's all been proven, and Mark is right out there on the front lines, figuring out how to clean up this, you know, this PFAS that's the current big issue in the state of Maine. The Mills administration was, their answer to PFAS was, you know, build solar farms on this property. Mark Fulford is about, no, let's clean it up. And he's going deep on it, and he's figured out the biggest part of it. The only part that he's having trouble figuring out now is the F part in PFAS, which is fluoride. How do you clean up the fluoride? And he's going to be speaking to us about that, and where he is in that process of figuring it out.
Nice. That's awesome.
And he actually spoke in Freeport when Kennedy was here.
Yes.
And Kennedy was really impressed with him. And if you're seeing this pattern, which we really didn't plan on, that there's common threads with all of our guest speakers that have to do with, you know, health, wellness, food,
Maha. Yeah.
It's coming together, and it's an energy all its own. And we had plans totally different than where we are today. We were going to invite certain people, and then a couple people couldn't show up, and then all of a sudden we started reaching out to people that came to mind, and all of a sudden it just started to gel together, and it makes sense. We also have some different demos this year. We have the Draft Horse Club coming and giving hay rides. We have the Antique Tractor Club is coming. We are actually going to have a primitive life skills group that's going to be doing things all day long. You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, the primitive skills people went to the Common Ground Fair for probably 20 years. And then there was a plaint of cultural appropriation because somebody was weaving baskets. And they got disinvited from the Common Ground Fair.
You notice, just really briefly before you finish, you notice that they don't ever claim that anybody other than white people culturally appropriate. When other people use, you know, things that were created by white people, nobody's like, oh my gosh, you can't wear that, you're black.
Yeah, there is a paradox there. There was a friend that I a fellow that I met one time was at some sort of a gathering, and he had dreadlocks. And he went for a cup of coffee in the morning, and they wouldn't give him a cup of coffee because he said that dreadlocks were cultural appropriation. And he says to him, yeah, where'd you get your coffee? It's that simple. It's that simple.
Yeah.
We also are going to have a health and healing tent again. So we have people coming. They're going to talk about, you know, different things we could do at home. We don't have to go to doctors all the time. And even when you go to a doctor these days, you don't get much. Your blood work looks normal. Everything looks normal. See you next year for your next physical kind of thing. And we also have returning is Prescott. He did the Constitution workshop last year, and he's doing that again this year.
Awesome. I think what you just mentioned is really, really important, and I just want to highlight it. I had somebody on my podcast a year and a half ago, maybe, who was a strong Kennedy supporter, registered Democrat, voted for Trump because of Kennedy and kind of did it through gritted teeth, but it was because of the Maha related stuff. And she actually runs a facility. And, there were some like the short version that I have to be careful what I say for, some people close to me's reasons anyway. But the point is you're not getting, like, you go to the doctors. This people that I know went to the doctors and they tried to give the medication. The medication didn't work. And then the doctors were like, whoa, maybe we'll try more medication. And I was like, no, you shouldn't do this. Reach out to this person, have some conversations. They did. And there has been substantial like growth in the positive direction to be able to actually address it, because people who are dealing with, like, I don't know if we call it holistic medicine, actually are trying to figure out what's going on. They're not trying to figure out how to medicate it, right? They're trying to be like, because a lot of it, as you guys would say, I know you would agree with this, is about the nutrients that we're putting into our bodies and whether or not we're putting in nutrients or toxins. And I think that's one of the biggest factors. And that we need to, as a society, figure out how to address. And my hope, one of the biggest issues is the food that we eat, obviously, right? And I do not, as the like free market, person that I am, I don't want necessarily regulations on big food per se to require them to make food in such a way. But what I want is us to be able to do a class action lawsuit against them for intentionally putting toxins into food and making it impossible for us to be able to afford to buy real food. That's what I want. That needs to come soon. Hopefully this will be one of the things that continues to push in that direction. And hopefully, Bobby Kennedy and they can clear a path for us to be able to do that. And then that will get them in line without having to force and still allow people to buy what they want to buy.
Well, one major thing going on right now is everybody, is talking about lime and different limes, because lime is not one thing. Lime is many different things, many different types. And we both have battled with lime in the last, I'm going on 10 years. And I just found out again that I still have, 2 types and dealing with that right now. You've had more success, like working through it and whatever, but, go to your primary care and some of the primary care doctors will say, Lyme, what do you mean? Here's some antibiotics, and then that's it. There's no follow-up. There's symptoms that it stays in your body for a long time. So that's an example of where I go to my primary care for blood work sometimes or a physical, but I see naturopaths, homeopaths, chiropractors, acupuncturists. I pay all that out of pocket, but I'm healthier that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. I think you got to have a primary care, and there are certain things that actually have to go through them, but a lot of the other stuff, if you're actually looking for nutrition and all that, just your doctors. I remember I probably said this one of the times that you guys have been on, but I was having some issues like related to GERD. And like outside of like omeprazole, they don't really, their answer is, well, you can see a nutritionist. And it's like, okay, well, and they're like, okay, in order to do through insurance and all that other kind of stuff, like there was so few people actually doing that were approved. And so it was like, I had to wait 6 months. So I booked an appointment. And then when we were about to have it, the person went on vacation and they pushed me out another 6 months. And I was like, nah, I'm good. And so like, anyway, it's like that's the normal medicine, we'll say. Again, their response to, oh, you need to lose weight, here's some drugs, and I'm like, no thanks.
But I want to back up to that whole Kennedy and Trump thing for a minute, because at that time when Kennedy was still running for president, there was an undercurrent, there was a bit of a rift within MSU. Because they were your hardcore, Republicans that were backing Trump, and then you had your independents and your more moderates that were backing Kennedy, and there was a bit of tension there. But almost to the moment that Kennedy announced that he was going to join in with Trump, you could feel everything shift. There was a huge healing within the community that we can get both. We can get what we want. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
That was some of the common sense thinking.
Yeah. But I know a number of other people with common sense who are in the same camp. They never would have voted for Trump if not for Bobby Kennedy. And I remember watching, I do have only a few more minutes, but I do remember watching, and so I want to make sure we get back to that, but watching that moment where RFK walks up onto the stage and gives his speech, right, about why. And it's not just what happened to him, which is significant, but it was the way in which he so effectively communicated everything that had happened and what led him to this place, and how dramatic and significant that was. That was. I remember seeing that and realizing the moment that we're in that moment and how significant that was. So
do you want to say anything else about primitive skills? I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, they're going to have a blacksmith there. They're going to have somebody tanning hides with the naturally with the brain of the animal. Every animal has enough oils and enzymes in their brain to tan their own hide, and there are actually going to be people doing that. And there are also going to be 3 Mi'kmaq women that are going to be working within that. And that's what this whole thing is about. We need to make these bridges like Kennedy and Trump did. They built a bridge. That was common sense. We can't keep up this old way. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. Yeah. If we keep arguing over whose culture belongs to who and who can use it and who can't and blah blah blah, we're going to be in the same place in another 100 years. If we can sit down and say, okay, this is our common space, this is our common sense, this is where we belong together, this is how we can work together, and just forget the nonsense. Then we're going to come ahead. We're going to have a blacksmith there making knives. That's a pretty hot item right now. Forged in fire. Everybody, that television podcast or whatever is pretty hit. People go there every week to watch somebody make knives. So that's going to be good. They're going to be doing Dutch oven cooking outdoors, teaching people how to make fire with bow drills and flint and all that sort of thing.
So we really wanted to keep our guest speakers small. So we have 4 really strong. What's that?
The number of speakers.
Yeah, the number of speakers. So we only have 4, so that there's more time for people to go do other things. Because we've had a lot of guest speakers on the stage in the past, and then some people sit there all day because they don't want to miss somebody. So we're really trying to work it so that there's 2 hours in between each guest speaker, so people have the opportunity to go to vendors, go try food, go see some demos, just meet other people, that they, like-minded people. So this is our format this year, is trying to get people to move about and be able to enjoy the entire fair. So that's our goal.
Well, I plan to be back there, hopefully selling some fun merch. I sold some, not as many as I would have liked, but of my T-shirts, my boys are boys, girls are girls, 2 + 2 = 4 T-shirts, for those of you who realize that and want to show it off. And I also sold some coffee, but I'll sell. Hopefully, I'll be there either way, and I'm really excited for I always love it's kind of the fair style food vendors, and so there's some great food vendors that'll be there, and then just a number of other like-minded people who believe in common sense. So I'm excited, looking forward. I hope we can have you guys come back on a little bit closer to the event, because it's the reminder that there's common sense. What's the link? Where do people go to find information?
www.commonsensfair.org.
Okay,
and vendors can go there and register as well. And any informational, if anybody is coming just to share information, they can get a table for free. They just need to register. If you're selling merchandise, it's $35 to be a vendor. And we have 16 spots inside in the Expo 2 building, but outside is unlimited space. So we're really encouraging vendors to sign up if they want an indoor space, because those will go fast.
Awesome. Yeah, so definitely check it out, sign up, come and check it out on the day of. And it's September
26th.
September 26th.
from
Awesome.
10 until
6.
6.
Mhm.
10 until 6.
All right. Well, I'm excited and looking forward to it. So, like I said,
Looking
we'll have.
forward to seeing you again.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
me too. All right. Thanks so much. You guys have a great day. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next week.